You won't find his name in any high school history textbook. No statues, no street signs. But Adriaen Janse van Impendam, a 17th century notary living in the frontier town of Albany, New York, was once the trusted hand that recorded the truth, until the world around him changed so completely, it erased his role and his reason for living. In 1686, at the age of 67, Adrian Janse took his own life, the only one recorded to do so in Albany's Dutch-era archives. Why did a man so devoted to law and order and language die alone? And what does his story tell us? Not just about the past, but about the power of being a notary public. Today, we uncover the strange and quiet life and death of a colonial notary and why his story still matters. I'm Sean Quinn, California Notary Public. I've signed, sealed, and stamped my way through hundreds of notarizations. But still, after all this time, I realized there's so much I don't know about our profession. About 4 million Americans hold a notary commission, and 1 billion documents are notarized in the U.S. every year. But the history of the notary public is largely unknown. We're here to change that. I joined forces with the National Notary Association to dive into our community, turn back the pages of our history, and tell the story of the American notary, one stamp at a time. I'm the Traveling Notary, and I'm here in New York City telling the story of the American notary. When we think of the colonization of New York, we usually think of Dutch merchants, English warships, maybe a map with slowly changing names. What if I told you this story also belongs to a man named Adrian Janse, a schoolmaster and notary public? He witnessed land deals, estate settlements, shifting power, and he recorded it all by hand, even though the system around him slowly erased the world he knew. He lived through Dutch rise and English conquest. And in 1686, after nearly 40 years of service, he died alone. His work nearly lost, his memory nearly forgotten. Today, we tell the story of death of a notary, a man caught in the storm of colonization, and the historian who brought him back. Donna Merwick's Death of a Notary, a historical text still used to this day to illustrate the tensions of colonial conquest in the Dutch colonies. There's a quote from Natalie Zeman Davis on the front that says, "Here in Donna Merwick's deft hands is microhistory at its best." Microhistory is a historical approach that focuses on the in-depth study of small, specific units of analysis, an individual or an event or a group of people, to uncover the broader historical themes and patterns. It's a method of examining the micro to understand the macro of history. And it's in this story that Donna Merwick dials into one man's experience to illustrate the cultural and historical changes happening in this part of the world. And luckily for us, Merwick's subject is a notary. New York's history begins in 1609 when Henry Hudson, sailing for the Dutch East India Company, enters the river that now bears his name. He's looking for a shortcut to Asia, but what he finds is something else. Dense forests, rich fur supplies, and vibrant indigenous trade networks. The Dutch move quickly. By 1620s, they've settled New Amsterdam on the southern tip of the island of Manhattan and Fort Orange up the river, which is later Albany. These are not sprawling English settlements. These are trade hubs, compact, strategic, and driven by commerce. New Amsterdam becomes one of the most diverse places in the Atlantic world. It is multicultural and multilingual. But New Netherland is also fragile. It's ruled by the West India Company, which means it's a colony that's governed from afar. Directors like Peter Stuyvesant try to impose order, but they're met with resistance, smuggling, and English tensions to the south. In 1664, English warships enter the harbor. Outnumbered and unsupported, the Dutch surrender without conflict. New Amsterdam becomes New York, named after the Duke of York. And even though it's a peaceful handover, for people like Adrian Janse, this is going to change everything. I have just finished chapter 1 of Death of a Notary, and the power is swinging from Dutch to English. Each entry is like a different thing that he is working on, different paperwork he's part of. It's just really interesting so far. I'm really surprised how familiar all of this feels. Swap out governors and empires. You can talk about states' laws. You can talk about technology shifts, how we have to be flexible throughout those changes in our profession. I mean, this book is about a notary from the 1670s. This is like over 300 years ago. And yet I am relating to this character so much. And if you ever wondered what our world would look like in the 1600s, or if you needed a reminder that our profession has always been adapting to change, this chapter is very inspiring. So I'm going to keep going. Chapter 2, let's do it. I just finished chapter 2 of Death of a Notary. We're going back in time. We're learning about his father, his life in the Netherlands, and sort of like seeing how all these things come together influence who he is as a person. So as far as the father goes, like, he's interesting. Jan Janse van Ilpendam, the father. He was a 17th century hat maker turned sailor, but he becomes a cautionary tale. He gambles, he takes shortcuts, he ends up in corruption, and ultimately his father dies bankrupt and under investigation. What's really powerful is that our notary, complete contrast to his father, chooses a very structured life. He embraces structure, right? His dad's kind of a scallywag. He's basically a pirate. Our notary, he becomes a teacher, a writer. He surrounds himself with books and knowledge and written word. That lines up so much to what would like lead him into a career of being a notary. It's a reminder for us, because being a notary isn't just like, it's not just about signatures and stamping, right? It's about accountability, record keeping, public trust, integrity, and it always has been. Adriaen Janse was born in 1618 in the Dutch city of Leiden, which is known for its famous book markets and universities. His father fell into financial disgrace and died far from home. But Adrian had another influencer, David Janse, his uncle. David was a prosperous bookseller and publisher in Leiden. David supported Adrian financially and intellectually, possibly inspiring his later turn to writing and teaching and notary work. Sometime in the 1640s, Adrian made his way to New Netherland. At first, he works as a schoolmaster in Manhattan, and over time, he becomes more and more involved in the legal life of the colony. He buys property, he drafts contracts, and he slowly builds a reputation for integrity. In 1669, at the age of 51, he becomes the notary of Beverwijk, or what we call Albany. And after a while, the work is good. He draws up leases, wills, powers of attorney. He records land transfers, many between the Dutch settlers and indigenous nations. He becomes a legal voice for a changing town. But change is the key word here, because the English are in charge now, and Janse's Dutch-style notarizations are going to become obsolete. Back with another Death of a Notary book update. I was able to do a lot of reading yesterday at my seminar, and I just finished chapter 4, so let's talk about it. Late 1640s, and Adriaen Janse is grinding it out in Manhattan. He's a schoolmaster, and that's not a salaried position. It's a position where people pay school fees to come. He also, remember when I said his father was a scallywag? Well, his father has a ton of debt, and to get himself out of that debt, he basically disowns his father legally. So some of the documents that we're talking about, he's signing away his father's inheritance, and it says that he kicks the inheritance away with his foot, which I think is great. That's in chapter 3. Now for chapter 4, so he's in Beverwijk and he's still a schoolmaster. Being a schoolmaster is not a big, flashy, or very lucrative thing for him to do in this very small town. To secure some more income, he buys a brickyard, which is an entrepreneurial risk, right? It just reminded me a lot of notaries today and how we always are wearing a ton of different hats, really invested in the community in multiple ways. And I see him sort of posturing himself as that in these last 2 chapters. I'm going to go inside because it is so hot out here, and I'm going to finish up chapter 5 and I'll check in with you then. Hi. We're back, and we've just finished chapter 5 of Death of a Notary. At this point, the economy is collapsing. Being a schoolmaster, you're getting fees from the students that are coming, and people stop paying those fees. So he starts lawsuits against people who have sent their kids to school but haven't paid. And that's probably really hard on the community in general. When you think about New York right now, it's bustling, it's commerce, it's the city that never sleeps, right? While back then, yes, it was a bustling port because it's hub of the fur trade. The philosophy of a Dutch colony is that it's there for commerce. They're not trying to make it a city. They're not trying to like put a bunch of people there so that they have a bunch of people that can expand, right? The Dutch are pretty small up there, which means every penny counts. During this time, a notary comes to town, and his name is, wait, I wrote it down. His name is Dirk van Skeljoen. Oh, I hope I'm saying that right. Adrian kind of shadows him and like sees the notarial process, and he also starts to become a legal witness. So he's helping this notary out with the notarial work by being a testis, or Latin for witness. Back in the Netherlands, becoming a notary was a trade that was passed down from your father to you. Janse's father was a scallywag. He wasn't passing him down any notary knowledge. So he's kind of getting this like proxy from this notary that has come to town. He's sort of positioned himself to become a notary by learning from this guy that came in. And we do that today still. We have to be commissioned through the Secretary of State, but you still got to learn from somebody. And back then, the NNA didn't have any classes available for him, so he had to shadow another notary to, like, be one. So today, we have plenty of classes. So if you want to become a notary, come hang out with us. We'll teach you how. If things changes in our economy, we're always adapting anyway. It just goes to show that being flexible and being able to adapt has always been a notary thing. We've still got a little bit to go. We've got 3 chapters left, so I'm going to get back to reading. After the English takeover, everything shifts. English common law replaces Dutch municipal codes. New York courts begin to look at London, not The Hague. Janse keeps working. His Dutch-style notarizations are elegant, but now they're foreign. And slowly, English-trained legal professionals like Robert Livingston rise to power. They speak the language of the crown. Adriaen Janse does not. He watches as his community changes. His clientele dwindles. He becomes increasingly isolated. He starts to misspell legal titles, even his own. By the early 1680s, he's a widower, he's aging, and with no children or other family, he's alone. In March of 1686, Adrian Janse takes his own life. He is the only person recorded to do so in Dutch Albany. There is no obituary. There's no church bells tolling. There's no record of burial. His notarial work, his papers, they were taken by a man named Jan van Loon and refused to be given back. For a time, it was almost like Adrian Janse didn't exist. More than 300 years later, Donna Merwick finds his name again. Merwick, who taught at the University of Melbourne, was a master of microhistory, telling big stories through small lives. Her book, Death of a Notary, published in 1999, became a touchstone for scholars of early America. She didn't just chronicle Adrian Janse's life, she interpreted it. She read between the lines. She understood the silences and traced the emotional cost of legal erasure.
Hello, I have finished Death of a Notary by Donna Merwick, and these are my final thoughts. Where we left off in chapter 5, he's being forced to diversify his income because he's not making money being a school teacher. So he also finds a venture on a trade route with a bunch of like mucky mucks in trade that takes him to Holland. While he's in Holland, the author speculates that he could have been reintroduced to the legal system in Holland, how structured and respected the notary trade was. Because when he comes back, he becomes a notary officially. With the English taking over, it's changing the language, it's changing the literal form of law that is used. And so he's doing notary work that is becoming obsolete. When he fills out these documents in English, he's spelling things wrong, which means these documents are not going to be accepted. Kind of a bummer, honestly. He also loses his wife. His wife passes away. He doesn't have family or kids. He doesn't have a pension. He eventually takes his own life. Can speculate why he did that or what he was feeling at the time. Historical change is taking its toll on the populace of the people that living in this historical change. That we see that today is it's upsetting. I'm upset. The 8th chapter is very much focused on looking back over this and coming up with a conclusion. And there was one quote that I thought was really tied this up perfectly. His life was inescapably entangled with the English conquest. While others could do it, he could not. Like half of this is her going back and talking about how the historians have used his work over years and years and years, and some conclusions she's coming from that, which to me, it just shows how important the work that he did was in telling the story of the New York at this time. I'm getting a whole new perspective on that, thanks to Adriaen Janse's story, and thanks to the work that Donna Merwick is doing. Dutch colonialism in New York from a notary's perspective, from the eyes of an everyday notary.
Her work is a reminder that history isn't just about presidents and battles. It's about notaries, too. Adriaen Janse's story shows us that our work matters. In times of change, it's the notary who makes the intangible real on paper. Each signature is a story, and like Adriaen Janse, we witness the stories around us through our work. I was incredibly touched by the way Merwick was able to see through the clerical work to the person behind it and humanize the people from so long ago, connecting us to them through over 300 years of history. Adriaen Janse couldn't stop the conquest of New York, but he recorded it. He bore witness faithfully until he couldn't any longer. History doesn't always reward the loudest, but sometimes it remembers the most careful. I think as a notary, we are uniquely positioned. We see, we record, we seal the everyday documents of everyday people. Looking back at notarial documents paints a picture of what life was like. We are a huge part of recorded history, and the integrity we bring to our position helps us trust the pen through time. I know it, Donna Merwick knew it, and I hope you know too how important the work we do is, and how important you are to your community now and through history. Maybe one day a historian will need your notarization to tell a story too. From Henry Hudson's River to Adriaen Janse's ledger, the colonization of New York was written one document at a time, and every notary today continues that legacy. Thank you for being a part of it. Next time on The Traveling Notary.
Trusting against the case. But then, needless to say, he had GERD.
I'm the Traveling Notary, signing off. I'll see you next time.